Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let's take a look at using desktop stacks on your Mac. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 2,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about it, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So desktop stacks is a feature that's been around for a few years, and it solves a particular problem that a lot of Mac users have. The problem is this: having a desktop that is littered with all sorts of different icons. Not only is this a lot of clutter, but it can reduce productivity, not being able to find things very easily. I find the best way to solve this problem myself is to simply not store any files at all in the desktop folder. But if you like having files on the desktop or find that you can't stop putting things there, then desktop stacks may be the solution for you to clean it up a bit. So to turn on desktop stacks, you can do it one of three ways. Now the first way is to go to View, and you should see Use Stacks right here in the View menu. But you have to have the desktop selected. So for instance, if you have another Finder window open, the Finder window here is selected. If you go to View, you're going to see Use Groups instead. And this applies to this window, not the desktop. You can select the desktop by clicking on it. And now you can see how this window isn't active anymore. Then if you go to View, you can see Use Stacks there. Or simply close the window so the only thing visible for the Finder is the desktop. And then you can go to View and then see Use Stacks. If you don't see Use Stacks here, it means the Finder is not the frontmost app, or you've got a Finder window chosen, not the desktop. So you can use this to turn it on. Second way, of course, there's a keyboard shortcut you can see right here: Control, Command, and then 0. Or you can use the context menu. You bring that up with either a control click, right click, or two-finger click on a trackpad on the desktop, and then you see Use Stacks. So with any one of these methods, if you turn it on, you're going to see this mess transform into this. These are stacks. Notice that each one represents a different kind of file. So I've got documents, images, movies, PDF documents, and so on. These aren't actually folders. No folders have actually been created. It's just grouping things together on the screen. So each file is still just there in the desktop folder. It's just now grouped visually. So if I want to see the individual files, I can do it by clicking on the group. So if I want to see the images, I click on the group here, and then all the images expand and they go into the next column if needed. And if I want to close it, I click again. So I can expand all the documents here. I can expand all the movie files like that. There's also another way to view what's in there. While things are open, if you want to do anything with these files, you certainly can. You can double click on one, for instance, to open it, and it'll open up in the default app. Or you can drag and drop it somewhere or do whatever you want. But you can't rearrange how they are here on the desktop, since the desktop is now using stacks, so everything is set in place with these stacks. There is another way to actually view the items inside of a stack, and that's put your pointer over it, like I'm over the Documents stack right now, and then using two fingers on the trackpad or mouse, you can move left and right like that over it, and it will scroll through the items. So you can use that to find something that you want and stop on it. And at this point, if you actually were to double click on the item, it actually would open it up and you could see the stack remains closed. So you don't need to open the stack to view what's in there. You can scroll back and forth with two fingers on a magic trackpad or magic mouse. Now when you add new things to the desktop, they automatically go into these stacks. So they're always going to be active if you have stacks turned on. So for instance, if I were to take this photo here and let's copy it with Command C, and then I'm going to paste it on the desktop, you can see it pasted inside this stack here. But do note that this doesn't change your desktop folder when you view it as a Finder window. So if I create a new Finder window here and I go to the desktop folder, I'm going to see all the files, the same ones that are in these stacks, but my desktop folder still views in whichever view I'm using here. So I'm doing List. If I do Icon View, everything's going to be set up here in the Finder window. Finder window shows your desktop contents independently of how they look on the actual desktop. So there's no stacks here in this. You can do View and use Groups to group things together. So you get basically the same functionality in Stack, but whether you're using groups in the Finder window doesn't affect the stacks that are on the desktop. Now by default, stacks are going to group by kind of file here: documents, images, movies, and so on. But you can go to View and then Group Stacks By and change that. So if you choose None, it's the same as turning New Stacks off. But I can switch to another kind of grouping. Like for instance, let's do Date Created. And now you can see everything is sorted here by years. The kinds of groups you get depend on the range of dates that you've got. So if I go and instead group by, say, date last opened, I'm going to get today, previous 30 days, and years, and then earlier for even before those years. If I do it by tag, you can see I've got a couple files here that have tags and the rest are grouped with no tags. And you've got some other settings here as well. Date added and date modified. You can also group by shared by. So if you have a lot of shared files on your desktop, you can see all the ones that are shared and all the ones that are not shared in different stacks. So let's switch back to Kind here. And I'm going to show you even more options. You get more options when you go to View and then Show View Options or Command J. This brings up the little window here with view options that changes depending upon what you have selected. So you're going to see different things in Finder view options if you have a Finder window open, for instance, maybe if it's in list view or icon view. But if you've got the desktop selected here, this is what it looks like. And you've got Stack By, and selecting None is having stacks turned off, and Stack By is having one of those options we looked at before. But you also here can select Sort By. So for instance, if I look at PDF documents here, I could change it so I can sort by date modified instead of date added. So it's the sorting inside of each stack. So you can sort them by name, for instance. So you can also change the icon size as you can normally on the desktop, and this will affect the stacks. Useful to have it larger if you plan on scrolling through them using 2 fingers. You can also change grid spacing, the text size for the text under each one, and you can even have the label position go to the right instead of underneath. A particularly useful one that I like to have turned on if I'm using this is Show Item Info, and this will put the number of items in each stack, which is really useful. You can also change from showing an icon preview, whatever on top of the stack being the icon there, and then kind of a jumble of other icons underneath it. You could change that to using the default icon for that document type. So we have pages for pages documents, numbers for spreadsheets, the JPEG little image icon here for images, and so on. This is great for people that don't like to constantly see the icons changing on their desktop when they add new files or sort things. This will just keep everything using the same icon all the time. So there are a couple extra things to know about stacks. One is that if you have aliases, that those will group just like they're the real file. So for instance, I'm going to go to the Applications folder. I know some people like to keep aliases to applications on the desktop. When you drag from the Applications folder to the desktop, it automatically creates an alias. It doesn't try to actually move the file there. So let's move a couple of apps there. I'm going to move the Calculator app here. And you can see here, since it's just one item, it just puts it there by itself. But if I put another item there, like the Calendar app, you can see now it creates a stack called Applications. And I get the aliases there. So aliases will group together in stacks just like regular files. But how about folders? Well, if we're on the desktop here and I create a new folder, the folder gets created there and it sits there by itself. And even if you add new folders, the folders don't stack. So any folders you have on your desktop will appear as just regular folders. You're not going to get a folders stack. Now it's okay to use stacks sometimes and not others. It's easy to turn it on and off. You just use the keyboard shortcut or just select in the menu there. Sometimes you might want to have stacks off. Sometimes you may want to have them on. Maybe you really do like working with a clutter of icons on the desktop, but you like to clean things up maybe when you're having a meeting or about to make a presentation, but not completely get rid of the items off of the desktop. So you can always use desktop stacks, never use desktop stacks, or you can use it sometime if you prefer. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.